Okay, so next up on the Project Miata, we are going to do a little bit of maintenance on the car since, again, we picked it up from a tow yard. We have no idea the history of the car, so I don't really quite trust it. So we're going to go ahead and replace the engine seals, like front main seal, camshaft seals. We're going to get in there, do the timing belt, the water pump, valve cover, gasket, pretty much everything that we can touch, all short of rebuilding the motor, just to get the car as healthy as possible for a potential track day shakedown, as well as get it ready for supercharging. So stick around, we're going to be doing a lot of work on the Miata, and enjoy the episode. This is Hazard Garage. Okay, today we are going to be tearing apart the front of the engine to replace timing belts, cam seals, crank seal, and a bunch of other stuff. So we are going to start that by pulling the airbox and emptying out the coolant from the radiator. So we're making some pretty good progress. We got the radiator out, we got the thermostat out. There's a little bit of corrosion in there, but we'll probably run some coolant flush to get that all situated out. Valve cover is off. I'm gonna take that home because I am going to paint that. And yeah, let's keep this going. Doing pretty good. Okay, today is another day. It is so hot that it's really making me move super slow. And it's my first time doing this, but so far we removed the accessory belt, the AC belt, radiator, and all the cooling stuff. And the next thing that we gotta tackle is the timing belt. So we got the car up to top dead center, and now I'm just gonna go ahead and lock the cam gears so I can take lock the cam so that I can take off the cam gears and start replacing these seals. So let's get into it. Fuck yeah! Good news! We got the crank pulley bolt off. Basically, we tried breaker bar with an extension, and unfortunately, I guess we couldn't lock the crank enough that it just wasn't working. It wasn't even bending the breaker bar. But last ditch effort, we took off the sway bar, put an impact gun to it, came off in like 2 seconds. So that's good news. So let's keep going. Okay, we got the 2 cam seals off. As you can see, we got them off a little bit easier than the rear crank seal, and kind of gained a little experience from doing the rear main seal on how to get these types of seals out. And you know, all the videos they tell you got to be really careful not to scratch the inside surface, sealing surface. And although that is true, it did make me a little bit overcautious on how to get these out. There is this tool that should work on these a lot easier than the rear crank seal was, and I'll link those down in the description below again if you want like a more specialized tool. But what you can do is, using a pick, you can actually be pretty aggressive with it to get the seal out. And the way these seals are built is the inner ring is pretty soft, and the outer ring, like this flat surface right here, as well as this surface right here, they're actually pretty tough. So it actually takes a little bit of effort to actually like puncture through and then be able to scratch your sealing surface. So what I realized is, if you poke a pick through the soft portion and basically hook it against the back of these more harder surfaces, it makes it a lot easier to get leverage to pull it out. If you go through, obviously don't try to poke too much that way, and it would take a good amount of effort to be able to poke too much and go all the way through this surface right here. So you don't have to be too scared of that, but again, get it in there, preferably on one of these side edges right here, what worked for me was actually going in a kind of like a downward motion, and that allowed me to hook against a good amount of that surface to give me leverage to get them out. So hopefully that gives you a little pointers on getting these out, since a lot of the other videos don't really talk about that too much in detail, but that's what I noticed helped me a lot to get these out. Okay, front crank seal is out. That one was a little bit more harder than the cam seals, mostly because the positioning, and also I just think they're a lot more seated in than the cam seals were, but it's out. I did unfortunately scratch a little bit of a surface, but I don't think it actually doesn't appear to be, and luckily it isn't any of the sealing surfaces that the seal was in. So that's good, but man, it was really in there. It actually started to bend the pick, so I actually had to bend the pick a couple times to reshape it. But I don't know if you could see it from here, but like right around this area, there's a couple of scratches that I had when I was trying to get some leverage to take it out. But again, luckily, it doesn't appear to be on any of the sealing surfaces of the seal, so we should be okay and good to go. So now that all the seals are out, we just gotta put them in. So let's just keep going on to the next step. Okay, so water pump is back on, the thermostat housing is back on. It was a big pain in the ass, especially this part of the housing right here, the side of the water pump. It's almost impossible to really get any good grip on the screws there because the power steering pump is in the way. So I struggled with that for a little while, but that is in. Also, the bolts that attach the water pump to the block, they only require about like 15 to 20 foot-pounds of torque, which is really, really, really light. And I guess it's so light that you almost might miss it when you're torquing it down with a torque wrench. I actually snapped one of these bolts off. So luckily, though, I was able to get a bolt that was the exact same length, exact same thread. The only difference is instead of being a 12, it's a 10. But everything fits the right length, no threading or anything like that. So luckily we were able to continue despite that little setback, but water pump is in and all the other seals are in, including the crank seal and the two camshaft seals, if I didn't mention that already. So we're just gonna keep going. I believe next is we're gonna start getting the belts back on and buttoning everything up. Okay, more issues. So despite my best efforts, the car is out of timing just a little bit. So before I get the timing belt on, I'm gonna go ahead and try to get things lined up properly. So here we go. Okay, I think we are timed. We got our crank Dorito in the Dorito hole lined up on the bottom, and we counted our 19 ribs in between the cam marks, and everything looks good. You could also see the marks on the cam gears are lined up with the marks on the backing plate. We are in time now. That was a group effort. That was teamwork for sure. The homies definitely helped out with that one. But yeah, everything should be good to go, so we can continue bolting everything back together. Okay, while we had the engine kind of open anyway, we went ahead and replaced the cam angle sensor O-ring. That one was definitely leaking. I saw it dripping a little bit when I was taking out the transmission. But forewarned, it's a little bit of a bitch like everything else on this car to get to. What ended up actually working really well was getting some sort of like flexible long socket wrench like this. And it allows you to fit behind, break the 12 here. And there's also a 12 bolt here that holds on like a bracket right here, sorry. And then this again, because of the angle and its low profile, was actually able to get me the clearance and the distance I needed to break it off. I'll leave a link in the description below for this type of tool. Super handy for many, many things because it's low profile, but it also has the length, so it's almost like a mini breaker bar. Anyway, second problem after that was couldn't quite get the actual angle sensor to leave its home, basically, because a bunch of stuff was in the way. So I ended up just changing the O-ring while it was in this area. And then popped it back on. Don't forget to mark with a scratch before you remove anything your angle sensor location, so that way you don't have to fuck with timing. Put it back in together, but yep, we replaced it real quick. It was super easy other than that, and yep. Okay, so we already got the stock radiator out because we were doing the timing belt and water pump and everything like that. So this is a good opportunity to go ahead and install a aftermarket aluminum radiator since Miatas have a tendency to overheat. So let's get that installed. Okay, we have transferred over the fans and accessories from the OEM radiator onto our aftermarket radiator. I will say it's a 98% fit. You're gonna have to do a little bit of drilling. For example, I had to drill a little bit bigger hole here, here, and here to get the fans to fit. And also these kind of like rubber, there you go. These kind of rubber stoppers here also had to drill just a tad bit larger for them to fit, but not bad for considering the price is like a third of a aluminum radiator elsewhere. But yeah, so everything's mounted onto the new radiator. So let's go ahead and fit it into the car. everything is buttoned up. The radiator is in. We got our water temp sensor adapter plugged in. Timing looks good, checked everything. There was a bit of a leak going on at the thermostat housing, but we just tightened those down a lot more, and it seems to have stopped the leak. I'm gonna have to probably pay attention to this over the next week or so as I'm putting some miles to break in the clutch, just to keep an eye out to see if I'm leaking any more coolant. It doesn't seem that way. I mean, there's some droplets, but I can't like catch it in the act of leaking. I could just kind of see evidence of it, so I'm hoping that's just leftover water from when it was leaking a lot. But again, I'm gonna keep an eye on it and make sure that everything is buttoned up and good. Also, we got our water temperature gauge installed. Show you that. And there we go. Very good. Pretty easy install. I apologize for not recording this. I forgot my camera the day before when installing everything, and I just kind of wanted to get everything buttoned up, but everything is in there. Pretty easy install. Basically, I just tapped into the back of the radio. That made wiring a lot easier. So if you're trying to do a gauge, you know, probably hooking it up to your aftermarket radio and just kind of leeching off of those connections is probably the best way to do it. But we got water temp, we got a temperature, set the gauge to 230 degrees Fahrenheit. I believe that is the absolute limit you want to reach before you kind of want to slow down and let it cool off. But other than that, you know, temp's good. There was no overheating. Everything should be good. Okay, and that's going to go ahead and do it for the engine seal, timing belt, water pump rebuild on the Miata. We did a lot of work, a lot for the first time. It was a learning process, but I really do feel confident now that, you know, we could do it again, although I don't want to. Really proud that we were able to get a lot of work done on the Miata. I think it's going to be running good and a lot healthier than it was when we got it. So next up is preparing the car for our first track day and shakedown. We got a lot of work done on the Miata, and we think it's a good time right now to kind of see where it's at. So keep an eye out for that next episode. Thanks again for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you want to see the rest of the Miata build.